Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and here with another Valentine card for my Valentine series. So I'm using an older set and a newer set for this card, and this is the Lawn Fawn How You Been stamp set. This was the original that came out as a stamp set, and there was two coordinating die sets for this. One just for the images, and then there was a shaker add-on, which I'm using both. And then I'm also using the new How You Been Conversation Heart add-on set. So it's got this little cluster of hearts, and then there's individual hearts, and then a whole bunch of little sentiments and whatnot to coordinate with this set. So I'm stamping the images I wanted to use onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And honestly, when I first started, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do, but I wanted to make sure to stamp the images because I was thinking more than likely I was going to make a shaker card. But just in case, I was like, well, I could just use, the main image and maybe use the other one on the inside. But got everything stamped out regardless onto the cardstock. And I used My Favorite Things Extreme Black ink. And then I'm coloring everything in with Copic markers. Now, I already posted just a sneak peek of the coloring on my Instagram, and I had people commenting like, oh, such great color choices. I can't take credit for the color choices. I actually just used the ones that Kelly, the owner of Lawn Fawn, that she used when they did a video showing this stamp set, and she colored them in. I just loved the colors that she used. They were perfect for conversation hearts, and of course they go really well with Lawn Fawn colors and whatnot. So rather than try and reinvent the wheel, I just used the same color combos. So I just went along coloring a couple of the hearts in the jar and then one of the individual hearts with the colors, which I've got listed here on the screen. Doing my same old working from darkest to lightest just to save me the time from having to blend everything out. So I would just go along and color the hearts, and it's with Copic markers. As they dry quite quickly, but as they dry, they do smooth out even just a bit more than they look when they're when you first apply that color. The ink is still wet. Sometimes it's like, oh, these don't look very blended. Let them dry. A lot of times they will look even smoother than you think. Because again, I've been getting comments about that. People saying like, oh, your blends are so smooth. Most of the time, it's just, you just need to let it dry and then take another look at it. And it's like, oh, because even there are times when I'm like, I didn't do a very good job, but I'll let it sit for a few minutes and it's like, oh, okay, no, it's smoothing out. It's all good. So after I colored in all those little conversation hearts, I am using just two colors for the jar here. So B01 and B00. So I went with more of a blue since I used that kind of minty blue-green for the conversation hearts. So just adding that in and coloring. And then on the second jar, I'm only coloring around kind of the outer perimeter because this is going to be die cut with the coordinating shaker die. So it's going to cut out that center area, so there's no point coloring it. So I just made sure to color far enough in that will get die cut so everything is, kind of seamless. And then I colored the lid with a couple of neutral gray markers. And then I'm going to start stamping all the little conversation parts. So I'm using Lawn Fawn's GUAVA ink. And the little conversation heart add-on set has a bunch of all these tiny little sentiments that are meant to be stamped on the hearts. So I just went along and stamped nearly, I think, almost every single one in the set. Just stamping them randomly. And then I got to this bottom one here and I couldn't fit the sentiment on without stamping over the other one. So I just used a corner of my little sticky note and covered that up just to kind of mask that so I could stamp that one. And then on the top, same thing. It wasn't going to work. So I just masked off that little purple conversation heart so that I could stamp the last little sentiment there. So they all have their little words on them. And it's just adorable. I love it. So I'm not the biggest fan of conversation. It's kind of like candy corn. I love the looks of them. I'm not a fan of the taste. I don't like conversation hearts at all. I really don't. But I think they're absolutely adorable. I think they're so cute. A jar of them is the cutest thing ever. So after I was done all my coloring and all my stamping, here's where I'm using the coordinating dies. So these two dies are from the How You Been Shaker add-on die set. And then the lid is from the original How You Been set because it die cuts closer to the image. And the heart is from the conversation heart add-on. So these are, I ended up using quite a bit on this card, but like I said, the other ones were older sets. And then I used the original conversation heart, or not conversation heart, the original How You Been die. You can see that there in the lower right. I'm going to use that to cut my transparency. I just have a box of overhead transparencies that I literally bought like a decade ago, and I bought a box of, I think it was like 100, and they're just by 3M, and that's what I use 99% of the time when I'm doing shaker cards and things like that. I just cut them down. So I'd use that particular die for the transparency because it actually cuts slightly smaller than this window here, so it just makes things easier to line up. So I have the back of the jar facing up here, and I'm just using some 1/8 inch score tape. Just going around, I'm letting it wrinkle up as I go around the corners. I'm not bothering to cut it because once I remove the backing paper, I can press those little bits down that are kind of, you know, bubbled or wrinkled up because I want around corners. You know, this is straight. So just press that down simply. No one's going to see that. I'm not too concerned about it. I just wanted to make sure I have that adhesive all around the perimeter of my window. And then I can press that clear transparency die cut into that. So that creates the front of my shaker here. And then I'm going to add my foam tape. So this is fairly narrow, this little jar shaker. So my little Derice foam strips are perfect. If you didn't have anything like this, like if you have just, you know, the regular 3M foam tape, etc., you can easily cut it down. I would cut it down probably into thirds. Definitely into at least thirds, if not quarters, depending, to get narrow little strips. But that's where these Derice foam strips just save me time and effort. So I peeled the backing off of them, and that makes them a lot more flexible. So I can just go around and adhere them. And I didn't think until after I'd already started adhering them. I should have doubled these up before even adhering them, and it just would have saved me the time. But I didn't do that, so I just went along after I adhered the first layer, and then I'm going to add a second layer. So I have 2 layers of foam tape here, and that just gives me more room inside my shaker for everything to move around. So I've got everything doubled up and made sure to double up behind the lid too, so that doesn't squish down at all. And then once I have my foam tape in place, I very lightly went along the inside perimeter with my little anti-static powder tool, just to kind of add some of that powder to any of the parts of the foam tape that might be sticking out to kind of prevent things from really sticking on the inside. And then I added my die cut individual hearts. And then I have some LACY's Twinkle Light sequins. I decided to add some of those too, just for a little bit of extra shimmer and for something to really shake. And once I had those, I press the back of the jar that I'd colored in the beginning onto that. And then I'm going to add some adhesive to the lid that I'd colored and die cut, and I'm going to adhere that. And now I have my cute little shaker jar with conversation hearts and sequins inside it. And then I took some of Lawn Fawn's SUGARPLUM cardstock, and I die cut it with their new LACY Borders dies. I used just one of the dies. There's 3. You can kind of see them sitting there on my desk as usual. I have a mess going on. So I die cut the purple cardstock from that, and I'd also die cut the top and the bottom of a piece of this blue watercolor pattern paper, also from Lawn Fawn. And then I die cut some green pattern paper from Lawn Fawn with one of their Simply Grassy Hills dies. And then for my sentiment, I'm using the Your Sweet line border die. And I was off camera when I did it. I didn't realize I was completely out of, screen when I ran the black cardstock through with my little Xyron X, the little tiny sticker maker. I just ran the strip of black cardstock through and then die cut it with the Your Sweet die, which just made this so much easier to adhere, because then all I had to do was peel this off the backing, stick it onto my card front like so, and then trim off the 2 little bits that are hanging off of each end. And then once I've got that into place, I can adhere this to my card base. So just adding more of my little Xyron tape runner to the back of this. And my card base is a standard A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to adhere my card front to that. And then I'd ran adhesive on the back of this jar. I'm going to adhere that. And then for the inside of my card, I'm using the Happy Valentine's Day sentiment from that Conversation Hearts add-on stamp set. So I'm going to stamp that in the same black ink. And then I decided to stamp the solid heart from that set with several different Lawn Fawn inks that I have in as close to the colors as possible that I used on the outside of the card for the Conversation Hearts. I just thought it'd be cute to stamp these on the inside just to give it a little bit of color, dressed up a little bit. So I used Butter, Peachy Keen, Minty Fresh, Grape Soda, and Bubblegum inks. I love the name of all their inks. It's just cute. So I stamped all those on the inside of the card, and that finished off this fun little Valentine shaker card. So as always, I will have a link below the video. Here's the shaker. I'll have a link below the video to my blog post and links to all the supplies used, so you can check that out in the description box below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.